So, I'm engaged. I haven't talked about it that much on my YouTube channel. I have only posted about my engagement photos on Instagram, but I haven't really talked about the whole engagement and my wedding plans for the future. And if you're curious about certain aspects of my engagement and wedding process, I'll have a couple of timestamps linked below. So yeah, let's jump into the whole engagement story. So yes, I got engaged on October 4th. It was a Friday. It was actually a week before our big Japan trip. He was going to meet all of my family members that live in Japan for the first time. We were going to be there for 2 weeks and do a lot of touristy stuff. And it was his first time going abroad. So I figured the engagement, which I knew was going to happen at some point within the year, I assumed, all of my family members assumed, all of my friends assumed, even my coworkers assumed it was going to happen on this trip. And so for context, usually once a week, my fiance and I will do some kind of date night, whether it's we're at home getting takeout or we'll actually go to a restaurant. And this time, my fiance was like, "Oh, I have a surprise for you for our upcoming date night on Friday." And I was like, "Okay, that's weird." Like, it's not totally weird, but he's never planned a surprise before for our date nights. So that was the first alarm bell. And then within that same morning that he told me that there's gonna be a surprise on this date night, I was talking about how I wanted to vlog a night in vlog or night routine vlog. And he just casually suggested that I should do my nails, which, I mean, it's not completely out of the blue just because I've talked about wanting to do my nails for a vlog before, but the fact that he suggested it gave me alarm bells like, oh, something is up. So because of that, I was frantic and I texted two of my closest friends, and my friend Elsa, she was pretty sneaky. So she hid it really well over text. She was like, "Oh yeah, like it might happen," or, you know, like, "How do you know?" Like, she was like, "Oh, why do you think it's gonna happen? Like, what are the hints?" You know? Versus my friend Jenna, when I texted her, she had a slightly more obvious response, and afterwards she told me that she's just not very good at hiding secrets, and she was just recently told, so I don't blame her at all. But it was really funny because as soon as she sent that response, I knew, oh, she knows something, something's up. So fast forward to Friday, it was date night. He told me we have to be out the door on the dot by 5. He had his whole surprise for me. So his quote surprise, or his first surprise for that day, was that we were gonna go vintage shopping. So in Minneapolis, there was a fall vintage shopping crawl going on. And so a lot of the vintage stores in the Northeast area specifically were part of this event. So we stopped by 2 or 3 locations in downtown Northeast before they all closed. We only had about an hour. So when he told me this, I was like, oh, maybe it's not happening. Maybe he's, playing games with me, getting my hopes up for nothing. So the next part of the surprise was dinner, which was expected because it was around 6 p.m. So I didn't think too much of it. But as we were getting closer to the areas where the restaurants were, he told me, oh, actually, let's take a walk. But yeah, as soon as he said that, alarm bells were going off in my head. Oh God, this is it. I gotta stay calm. I gotta stay collected. From downtown Northeast, where all the shops were, we walked over to St. Anthony, Maine, which is right on the Mississippi. It's a really gorgeous area. My fiance and I have went there previous times, all the time, just because it is a gorgeous area for date night. And then he told me that he wanted to go walk on this little trail that's right off of that street. We've always walked by this trail before, and we always talked about walking through it, but we just never have. So this time around, he actually did take me on this trail. And the whole time we were walking around, there were a lot of very pretty spots. There were a lot of bridges and little scenic areas. And every time we were walking across a really beautiful bridge or really beautiful area in that trail, I was like, oh God, is it gonna happen? About 10 minutes into the walk, when all of a sudden he stopped me while we were walking across the bridge. There were no people around us, and he popped the question. I don't have pictures of the actual proposal, like the live proposal, which is fine because when I previously told him what I wanted from the proposal, I told him private. It can be outside in a public space, but as long as there's no people around, just because I can get a little self-conscious, a little nervous when there's people watching me, especially strangers. So he did a really good job at picking a beautiful yet secluded spot that was also sentimental to us just because we love that area in Northeast. I don't want to talk about exactly what he said, but partially because I'm not going to do a very good job of explaining it, and also I blacked out halfway through it, which I feel like is very common. Anytime I've asked any of my friends and acquaintances who have gotten engaged, you know, if they remember their fiance or husband's proposal speech, most of the time they also said that they pretty much blacked out. So it is a pretty common thing. But yeah, here is the ring. It's this gorgeous sapphire. One of the things I wanted in an engagement ring was some kind of green stone. I love the look of diamonds, but I specifically wanted something with color, something that kind of has like a vintage, unique charm to it. So when I was doing some research, I love the look of emeralds. I love green. I think it's a very timeless color, and clearly I'm obsessed with green. But I am also a very clumsy person, and I accidentally like knock my rings everywhere or like slam it easily. So I knew that if I got an emerald, there's a good chance it might get chipped. When I was doing research on emerald engagement rings, I have learned that emerald is a little bit more on the softer scale in terms of how hard and fragile stones are. And essentially, diamonds are basically at the very top. They're like a 10. That's the perfect stone to get if you don't want anything to get chipped. And then number 9 is sapphires and moissanites, I believe. So because of that, I decided not to go forward with an emerald and instead requested a green sapphire. The best thing about sapphires is the color range for the stone is so vast. You could get pretty much almost any color you want in a sapphire. Another requirement that I had specifically is I wanted it ethically sourced. If it was real, I wanted it ethically mined, or I told him, you know, that can get really expensive, so I am totally fine with a lab-grown stone. Since my taste was very specific, I basically just sent him links of like, hey, in case you don't want to like create your own or design your own, like here are just some links that I think is within your budget that, you know, I am totally fine with. But in the end, he actually went to a local jeweler and actually custom made a ring based off of my stone needs and like color needs. We went to a local jeweler and actually spent about 2 to 3 months working with the store to custom design a ring for me, which was really sweet. So he actually did the research and found a thing called Montana sapphire. As you can tell from the name, these are sapphires that were mined in the state of Montana. Montana sapphires specifically have a very unique color range. They kind of go for a more kind of light green, more of an aqua color, rather than that traditional dark blue sapphire color. It is a circle cut as well, so in the light, it just has a gorgeous shimmer to it. And then to accompany the sapphire, he got 2 lab-grown diamonds next to it. So after the proposal, my fiance's childhood friend, who's also a photographer, actually came out and took some pictures for us, which was super sweet. I wasn't expecting professional photos for this whole day, so that was a really nice touch, and he knew that I would love to have really nice photos of the day. So we took our pictures, said goodbyes, and then we went to dinner at Astor Cafe, which is probably one of the most beautiful restaurants in that area. And then while we were at the dinner, my best friend and her husband actually broke into our house without me knowing and placed flowers, roses, and a chocolate and my favorite red wine on the table, which was really sweet. I was so glad that she was a part of my proposal just because I was also a part of her proposal a few years back, so it was very special to have her there. So yeah, now that the proposals happened, we have started planning our wedding, which is really exciting, but also very scary and not scary, but stressful for sure. especially considering how much weddings cost nowadays. So currently where I'm at in terms of wedding planning, I booked the ceremony venue. I am very close to booking the reception venue, but because we booked the ceremony and close to booking the reception venue, we have a date, which is very exciting. So originally, I was looking into October 2025 dates. So basically about a full year after the proposal. In the end, after talking to many event coordinators, going on many tours, checking their availability, and also, getting slapped in the face with the outrageous quotes that I've been receiving for these reception spaces. In the end, it made the most sense to book our wedding for the spring. Specifically, we are having our wedding in March of 2026, which I'm very excited about. So yes, because our wedding is now going to be in March, my wedding planning and wedding kind of mood board went from a fall moody aesthetic to now a colorful and spring aesthetic, which 2021 me would have never thought I would go for. I think pre-2022 me, I was super into that like dark and moody and celestial kind of aesthetic. I thought my bridesmaids would be wearing all black. We'll have like moons and stars and golds everywhere. Now fast forward to 2023 when my fiance and I were starting to become more accustomed to the mindset of getting engaged soon. My changes turned more colorful, and I think that's with both wedding trends and also fashion trends. I think the last couple of years, it has leaned more towards exploring color and being a little bit more bold. So based off of my current tastes, as well as the vibes of the ceremony venue and reception venue, my overall wedding mood board is leaning towards a colorful color scheme, has a lot of vintage elements, and it also has a few florals and cozy speakeasy vibes. Very specific, but I'll explain why. So my ceremony space, I'm not going to say exactly where, but if you're from the area, you probably can guess. But it is at a gorgeous indoor garden. I specifically had to choose indoor because 1, I was terrified it was going to rain. 2, it's going to be March in Minnesota. And March in Minnesota looks very different from March in, let's say, Florida. Meaning the weather can be 55 degrees, sunny and beautiful, or, which is most likely the case, is there will be a blizzard. So I wanted to keep it indoors just in case anything happened. So because of that, I wanted to keep the color scheme very colorful and bright and fitting for the spring season. We're going to be surrounded by spring florals. Now keep in mind, everything I say and every inspo pic that I show is not final. It may change because my wedding is not for over a year from now. So, my taste may change over time. So in terms of colors, I definitely want to do some kind of multicolor color scheme where all of my bridesmaids will have their own signature color. We'll have greens, pinks, yellows, and then maybe a blue or like a purpley blue in there. I think they'll be really pretty. I was doing research on florals and specifically how much real florals cost, and I basically had a heart attack. So I think what I might end up doing for my wedding bouquet and most likely my bridesmaids bouquets as well is either artificial flowers or dried flowers. I was leaning more towards dried flowers until we picked the ceremony venue. I think since we're going to be surrounded by real beautiful flowers, the bonus is we don't have to decorate. I don't think we're even allowed to decorate the space, but we're going to be surrounded by, beautiful decor that we don't have to do anything with. The downside is if we had dried flower bouquets, I think it'll be really obvious that they're dried compared to the real flowers that we're going to be surrounded with. So I might look into artificial bouquets, specifically on Etsy. They're very affordable compared to some of the rental places I've seen online. As for the reception, we are going to have our reception at a restaurant, which is specifically what I had envisioned in my mood board. A lot of the weddings that I saved on Pinterest actually took place in restaurants, specifically like New York restaurants. And they all kind of had this cool speakeasy, cozy, vintage vibe to them that I really liked. So when I was doing research on reception venues, I looked at both traditional reception venues, specifically with that like industrial, cozy brick aesthetic, but I also looked at restaurants that offer either full buyouts or they had a separate venue space. Another reason why I was looking into restaurants is the food quality. Typically, if you book an event at a restaurant versus an event center where they have either in-house catering or partner catering, the catering is not as great in my opinion. So luckily, in the end, we decided to go with a restaurant who actually had a separate large event space. So we kind of get that vibe, that aesthetic of the restaurant, while also not having to do a full buyout, which can be very pricey. So in terms of like the photography that I'm looking for, the decor that I'm looking for, and even just the general aesthetic of the event, I wanted to go for more of a vintage speakeasy vibe. So I'm imagining cute little lamps, cocktail lamps on the tables, espresso martinis. Generally looking for like a 70s colorful vibe while also having it be kind of a dark and moody speakeasy vibe aesthetic. It's very specific, but I think it'll be easy to achieve just because this specific retro vibe has been very popular in the last couple of years. For the actual wedding dress, I'm still not exactly sure what I want. I'm gonna start booking wedding dress appointments next month, which I'm really excited about. Some of the stores I'm considering is Anthropologie Wedding. There's actually one in the Twin Cities, and I've heard really good things about it. In terms of the wedding industry and the wedding prices and the style that I'm looking at, they're more affordable on the price range. Now, affordable meaning $1,000 to $2,000, which is a lot, but compared to other dress shops in the city, that is pretty affordable. Another dress shop that I'm considering visiting is a vintage wedding dress shop, which I had no idea that there was a vintage wedding dress shop in Minneapolis. My dad actually sent me the link, which is really sweet of him that he's actually doing the research. And then the last stop will be a traditional wedding shop that I have been to for my friend's wedding in St. Paul. So those are probably the three main places I'm gonna go to. But yeah, that's everything I have planned so far for my wedding. I appreciate you if you've made it this far into the video. I'll be doing a lot of wedding planning in 2025. So if you want to join me on this journey, whether you are engaged yourself or just love wedding content in general, please subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.